Welcome to the Come Up Starter Kit, guys. My name is Shankar, and I have a wonderful guest with me today, Fidelma Gurnett, who is a geospatial analyst. And she's actually moved over from Ireland to Australia, but she's been here for some time, so she's almost Aussie. Thank you so much for jumping on board.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here and share my story.
Wonderful. All right. Now, I always jump in and ask this tricky question. If you could sum your life up to date in 60 seconds, just so the audience can get a feel of who you are, how would you go?
Yeah, my life to date has just been a journey of traveling and trying different things, from doing my science studies and finishing that. And then I took a gap year and decided to teach in the Middle East for a year to see what that would be like, which was a lot of fun. And then I came home and tried a different odd jobs. I was a barista and I was worked in a jewelry shop as well, which taught me a lot of valuable life skills. And then finally, I got my first GIS job up in Dublin. I was there for a while, and then I decided to come to Australia and see what all the fuss was about. And I've been here 4 years later and loving it so far.
Very good. So you're a barista. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Melbourne coffee? Does it scrub up to what it's all about?
Oh, absolutely. Otherwise, I would have left a long time ago.
Very
Best-
good.
Some of the best in the world, for
Oh,
sure.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, good, 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 good. All right. So you're pretty much halfway around the world. You find yourself in Australia. I guess what was that initial reason to move from Ireland over to Australia?
I just really wanted the chance to travel more. There's a fantastic Irish community here in Australia, which I'd heard about, and I thought Australia would just be a great fit for me because there's so much to see and do here, and you can also travel to New Zealand or Bali or lots of different places. And yeah, I just thought it'd be such a good fit because I had friends here already, and it really has proven to be a great fit so far.
Yeah, good. Okay. So I think in this first half, I think it would be quite beneficial because you've come from Ireland and moved over to Australia. I reckon there's a lot of people out there that may be in the same boat and may want to know a little bit about that journey. I guess I'll jump right into it. Was it a difficult process from moving from Ireland to Australia?
Um, it wasn't a difficult process in terms of getting a visa or a bank account or anything like that set up. I was lucky enough to go through a company who it was their job to sort of make that process easier. So they organized the visa and the bank account and those sort of logistical things for me. So I was lucky in that way. But the whole process is very straightforward. They Getting the job was probably the trickiest part. I would recommend to anyone to do a bit of due diligence before they get here, because depending on your visa, it determines what kind of role you can get and what is available to you. So I would definitely advise people to do that before they get here. But in terms of actually moving here, it was easy. The hardest part is definitely leaving friends and family at home and moving to the other side of the world. That's definitely the hardest part, and it's not easy for anyone, but yeah, that's the trickiest part. Definitely is missing friends and family, but it is a great community here, so you'd never feel too far away from home.
It's wonderful. And I know that we sort of spoke just before this, and you mentioned that there's a good community of Irish people here in Australia. Did that make it easy for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak for other communities, but definitely the Irish people here are very welcoming and everyone's willing to help each other out, especially if you join a football club or join a GAA club here. It's very easy to make friends and network, which gets you plugged into the social scene here, which always makes life a little bit easier when you make friends and have people to talk with and help you. And if there's anything that you need, they're always willing to lend a hand.
Very good. I always say that the Irish are the most charming people of the world. So very good. All right. So I wanted to ask as well, was there a specific type of visa that you came across on?
Yeah, for me, I came on the 1 year working holiday visa. There's definitely other avenues. I'm sure that people can get sponsored, by an employer or go start on the process of permanent residency before they get here. But for the majority of people, like myself, I came over on a 1-year working holiday visa. And then within that 1 year, you have to do 88 days of regional work to be granted your 2nd year working holiday visa, which we did. So that's how we started the process.
How was that regional work process like? How was that adventure?
It was definitely an experience. It was definitely an experience. It was something I'd never done before. It was completely out of my comfort zone. I was on a tree plantation up in the Northern Territory and the outback, which was totally different than anything I was used to. And I was just off the plane. I think I'd only been in Australia 2 weeks when we went straight up. And that was a whirlwind adventure, but people can get very unlucky with their farm work. Luckily for us, it wasn't too bad, except for the critters and the wildlife we had to deal with and the heat. The work itself wasn't too bad. But people can get very unlucky in terms of what they have to do their farm work, because it's not really that well regulated. So it's sort of like you get your job through word of mouth, you know someone who knows someone, and that's how you get a job, and you just do your 88 days as quick as you can. And that's how you complete your regional work, really.
So you're quite comfortable with Australia's deadly creepy crawlies?
Absolutely. I have no fear of spiders. I still have a fear of snakes, but
No.
no, no fear of spiders anymore.
Very good. All right, cool. Um, Now jumping into that, you mentioned that the company that you came across helped sort of set up your bank accounts and anything like that. Outside of that, was there anything that you felt necessary that needed to be set up once you're on ground here in Australia?
Um, do you mean that needs to be set up before you get here or when you're here?
Yeah, it could be prior before you get here or even once you get here.
Um, well, the bank account was sorted before I got here, but things that you need to sort out while you're here are your tax file number. You need a SIM card, an Australian SIM card, which makes sense. Also, finding accommodation can be tricky. The way the rental market is at the minute, it's very competitive. So if you know someone you can stay with when you're here, maybe friends or family, that you can sort of take your time and find somewhere accommodation wise that suits you, then that's probably the trickiest part, just kind of getting up and running that way.
Yeah.
Finding jobs is relatively easy. You can always pick up bar work, especially now after COVID. They're crying out for hospitality workers, so that's definitely easy. But in terms of the logistical stuff, it's all very straightforward.
Okay, cool. All right, so before we jump into, I guess, what you touched on around the job search and what have you, I wanted to give the audience a bit of an insight into you and what you studied. So if you just want to give them a bit of a rundown in terms of what you did study.
Yeah, so my bachelor's degree, a 4-year bachelor's degree in environmental science. And when I finished that, I wanted to do a postgrad because I felt it was important to specialize in something and it would improve my employability. So I did a 1-year postgrad in the UK in environmental and geological hazards. It was after that I decided to take a break from studying and do my gap year and do various things. When I came back to Ireland, that's when I first got my first job in GIS. So it
Okay.
was environmental science and then specializing. And then that's when after that, I got my first job.
Yeah, perfect. And now for people that may not know what GIS is, what is GIS?
So GIS stands for Geographical Information Systems. And most people will have used GIS without really realizing it. So if you have used maps on your phone to track your location or to find where you're trying to go, you will have used a GIS. Another way, if you have uploaded a picture to social media and tagged a location, that's also using a GIS. So we live on the surface of the earth. So almost everything has a location data attached to it. So GIS is a platform where we can put that location data and we can analyze it and manage it to extract useful information.
Okay, wonderful. All right. And so now if we deep dive into your role and what a day in a life looks like, how would you describe that?
So any geospatial analyst will always work with geospatial data. So either you manage that geospatial data, analyze it, process it. You could use that then to make digital products and services. Specifically for me, because I work in an environmental consultancy, my day-to-day involves various things. So usually I take different information. So that could be historical data, satellite imagery, it could be LiDAR data, it could be CAD data. I take all that information and put it onto a GIS. That way I can use the information and spatially reference it in order to make it useful for clients or people out on site to improve their accuracy of what they're trying to do.
Okay, wonderful. And
Yeah.
when we talk about the range, when you talk about spatial data, what do we mean by spatial data and how much sort of, or what are the sort of data sets out there that you mean by spatial data?
So there's so many examples of spatial data. So anything that has a location is spatial data. And so that could mean, for example, any company that will use spatial data, for example, could be like Starbucks. If they wanted to build a new coffee shop somewhere, they would use spatial data to do to find appropriate sites to put the coffee shop. They would use transport information to find out, for example, where there might be traffic jams. That might be an ideal place to put a coffee shop if there's a traffic jam. Where's the greatest foot traffic? They would use that to find the best location for a coffee shop. The local governments use spatial data, for example, to identify COVID hotspots. Telecommunications use spatial data to track their utilities for asset management and upgrades of their assets. Environmental conservation uses spatial information. Real estate use spatial information for site identification and target marketing. It really is endless, the amount of possibilities. So anything that has location information can be put into a GIS. And what we do is we take information out of spreadsheets and onto a map so that you can see your data. And in that way, you can pick up patterns and trends more easily and make intelligent decisions. And businesses love that because it helps improve their productivity and their profitability.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Now, this is such a niche role. I would imagine that there are not a lot of people that would be aware of this type of career path. How did you stumble across it and what made you pick it?
So we had a GIS component as part of my degree, so I was always aware of GIS. And I'm sure everyone will know that technology is just booming, and web GIS is booming alongside that, and everyone is getting connected and everything is becoming more open. And because of that, GIS is also becoming a burgeoning industry. So I wanted to be sort of at the forefront of that, and you become more employable when you are involved in information technology. I think it's just so useful to so many different applications and so many different industries. I thought that the variety would be fantastic, and it would be it's a great industry to be in and great skill set to have as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, speaking of variety when it comes to work, you also worked within the Melbourne airport doing GIS. What was that like and what did your role entail there?
So that role mainly involved in sort of setting up the GIS. They didn't really have any GIS, a sophisticated GIS at that time. So we mainly worked with CAD drawings, and we would ground truth those CAD drawings that means going out into the actual airport buildings themselves and seeing what was up to date and what wasn't up to date, then taking those drawings and digitizing them in their GIS so that it could be used for administrative purposes. It could be used for ad hoc requests for the airport. Yeah, it really was just the starting point on which they built on top of for their GIS services.
Can you say you are putting data or information into the GIS? Is that essentially a like a database effectively? What do you mean when you're saying that you're putting it into the GIS?
Yeah, exactly. It is a database. It's a database. Sorry, excuse me. It's a
That's okay.
database where information can be related to one another, and that database is then managed by geospatial analysts in order to extract useful information from it, which can be then uploaded into the cloud and used for various purposes for clients and stakeholders. And yeah, it's mostly about just extracting useful information from spatial data that we put into databases, and we manage those databases.
Interesting. Okay. And if you reflect back on your job currently and previous roles, what would you say are the essential skills that someone needs in order to perform this type of role?
Yeah, so I think being having an interest in big data is very important. I think if you're analytical and you enjoy working on different projects and you are creatively minded, you can do very well in GIS. The possibilities really are endless. If you are the type of person that likes working with spatial data and overcoming different challenges and keeping up to date with the latest technologies, then absolutely the world is your oyster in terms of GIS.
Very good. And would you say that this is quite technical heavy, this type of role?
It is very important to be technically minded. Yes, I think so. You don't necessarily have to have a technical background. My background is environmental science. You could have a background in geology. You could have a background in design or engineering, for example. But as long as you're interested in data management, and as long as you're interested in extracting useful information from that data and how it can be spatially related, then I think absolutely you can definitely do very well in this job.
Okay, very good. And maybe for people that are in university or coming out of high school, in order to get in this particular role, is there a specific degree that you need to have? So do you need to have that environmental type degree or something within the IT field in order to get into this job?
For my role, it was useful to have an environmental science degree because that's the company I'm currently in, but you don't necessarily have to have an environmental science degree. You could have, like I said, a geology degree or a design engineering degree. No, you don't necessarily have to have that type of degree. But it is obviously, there are courses and degrees you can do now in GIS, and that's definitely fast tracking you into a GIS career, but you can also get into GIS from having industry experience and just having a general interest in technology and big data will definitely get you there too.
Okay, very good. And now, if you were to look at your time during your career, what would you say are some challenges that you've faced within your career? It could be specifically within GIS or anything outside of that.
Yeah, I would love to have paid more attention to coding when I was in university. I think that
Interesting.
would have been an invaluable asset to have now because coding, if anyone that works with information technology will know that coding is extremely, extremely useful and essential. So I'd love to have maybe done some courses on that. We use coding a bit now in our GIS, and you can definitely use more of it if you want to use more of it. I use a bit of it. For what else would I have done? I would like to have developed a bit more my softer skills. So presentation skills would have been very useful to have done a bit more of that in university. But yeah, like it just depends on where you want to go with your career, what skills you want to develop, really. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
And within this particular role, or just within GIS overall, is this type of role mainly based inside an office, or are you also going out on site as well?
So my role is mainly office based because it's all about database management.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of, I'm based in the office most of the time, but you can definitely expand the role and um, be involved in surveying, or you can become more involved in maybe the drone side of things and the aerial imagery side of things, the remote sensing side of things. You can definitely go more down the information technology road and build the architecture around GIS and move into enterprise GIS and web GIS and mobile applications. So there's definitely an opportunity to do that, but there is opportunity also to get out on site sometimes if you want to do that.
Okay, wonderful. I think a lot of that, what you've just mentioned, covers what I'm about to ask next. But is there a typical career path within the GIS sphere, and what would they look like, or what could they look like?
So you'd start off as a GIS technician and move up to an analyst and then become a developer where you would develop apps and web products for GIS. And then you could possibly move into GIS engineering. I don't know too much about that. I think it's more about designing the architecture around GIS.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but I wouldn't say there's a typical career path. I think just depending on where your interests lie, you could do more of this and less of this. But I wouldn't say as such there's a typical trajectory, but
yeah,
there
very
is
good.
a massive potential for growth.
Okay. And it sounds like you love it. What do you love most about your role?
I do enjoy how information keeps changing and technology keeps changing, and in our field, it's always important to keep on top of new and emerging technologies because the world is just getting more connected. So it's up to us and to be aware of that and how we can improve our systems and make them better for the client and make them, more usable for the client and just yeah, it's always very exciting because there's always something new to learn and a new challenge to face and to overcome. And when you meet different people and they have different challenges and different problems, it's always new and interesting ways to approach those problems and learn something new.
Very good. And what is the next step for you in your career?
I love working on different projects. So I'd love to expand into different areas, maybe possibly learn a bit more about climate change or renewables, using GIS. Yeah, I'd love to just, expand my skill set and challenge myself always into new areas and yeah, just keep myself always, keep myself always on my toes. It's always good just to constantly challenge yourself more and more. But yeah, I'd like to see what's out there and the variety and yeah, where it can go.
Very good. And I always ask this as a final question. What has been the best career advice that you have received?
And the best career advice I actually received was um, being told to get into a niche sector. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so I remember someone saying, don't ask me who, a wise man, um, said that find a skill set that's very niche and that you can get paid to do. So that's one side of it. So that's very good. If you can manage that, that'd be great. And also, it's important to get into a supportive company. So if you manage to, or if you find a company that will support your career development and are always interested in helping you expand your skill set and helping you grow as a person in your career so you can enjoy what you're doing and become more productive, that just benefits everyone. So I think that's also a very important side of things. Finding a company that wants to see you grow.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Very good. Fidelma, thank you so much for your time. You have been amazing.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great.